in Nevada Buck. I'm gonna get this posted. Yeah, this is Nevada. In all of your years of watching college football, where does today rank in terms of absolute insanity and craziness? Because I can't remember a day like this because this was a wild one.
Yeah, no, this was definitely a crazy day. I mean, it ranks right up there with I think it was the day that you guys got into the final in '07 or whatever it was, and all the madness that went on there. And
Uh-huh.
um, I mean, just there's been so many, you know, today what we had number one go down, you had number six go down, you had number four get threatened. I mean, all sorts of teams are back in contention right now. You've got, everybody from, you can't knock out USC. You can't rule out Oregon. You can't rule out UCLA for that matter. TCU. I mean, man, there's a lot of people that are in the chase. So yeah, today opened the door for a lot of people. Things got crazy, and you know, as we sit there, the Buckeyes sitting at 9-0. It looks better and better upon reflection about what happened the rest of the day with Clemson getting run by Notre Dame, and yeah, just a crazy, crazy day.
Yeah, it was hard because you hit me up earlier and you're like, "Do you want to do a show?" And I was like, "I'd love to do a show, but there's just so many good games on." My God, I mean, it was just like you got to have like your iPad open, your TV. I mean, you got to have like five different screens on because at the same time you've got Clemson, Notre Dame, which Notre Dame does us a huge favor, by eliminating Clemson, but also it makes their strength of schedule look much better. You've got the incredible Bama LSU game in Death Valley. The big Brian Kelly, story about the whole reason he literally left Notre Dame was to come to LSU so he could beat Brian. He could beat Nick Saban and have those types of athletes on his team. He gets it done. Michigan was struggling for the first half, losing to Rutgers at the first half. I mean, and there's still games like USC's playing right now. There's still games going on, but I just like when there's that much action going on, and we're supposed to be people that are knowledgeable about what we're talking about. Like you have to sit and watch it. You got to kind of pay attention. You can't be doing other things. I've been glued, to the couch and the TV and iPad since noon, basically watching Ohio State, obviously the big Georgia game, and then the night games. Spectacular day. So let's jump right into Ohio State Northwestern. Obviously, a lot of people upset, a lot of people distraught. Obviously there's a lot of stuff that needs to get fixed, but a win is a win, and on a day like today, it's always a good reminder that winning by 1 point is always good. It might not be pretty, and people might be angry, but it beats the converse, which happened to a lot of good teams today. But give me your thoughts on Ohio State Northwestern as that game wound down, and as you've had the 3:30 games and the night games to digest.
Well, just let me again. I think you got to look at the Ohio State game in the context of everything else that went on today. And the first thing I'll say is the quarterback run is the great equalizer in college
Oh my
football.
God.
I mean,
Yeah.
how many times do you have to say like tonight? It's like you just see these quarterbacks screaming. Like LSU beats Bama literally on the strength of the legs of that quarterback. That quarterback's legs they just broke their back time and time and time again. And every time you see these quarterbacks running, you just realize just how overpowered the quarterback run is in college football. And if you don't have it operating for you, you're operating such a disadvantage. I mean, is there a single team in college football that doesn't or that operates the quarterback run less than Ohio State does right now? I mean, I
Not,
can't
not
think of one.
not good teams. I mean, Stetson
No.
Bennett was running all over the place. Hendon Hooker, the two guys. I mean, obviously LSU and Bama's guys are running all over the place. I mean, it's so hard to stop. And I know we say it every week, and people say, "Oh, we don't want JT Barrett, and we don't want Tommy Frazier," but I mean, all the good teams do it except us. We're the ones that we're just too cool for school sometimes. We're too soft to do that stuff. But, when you're playing Georgia, you can't hold any of that shit back. You can't be sitting there saying, oh, well, we don't want to get our nails dirty because you're going to have to pull out all the stops because they are the 800-pound gorilla this year. We saw their defense. We saw what they did to Tennessee. Tennessee's offense is every bit as good as ours, and they were stifled. Their D line is spectacular. So, but yeah, it was nice seeing CJ pull it, and again, like the thing about the running game is it's the great equalizer. When it rains, when it snows. In 2007, when we went up to Michigan, it was 36 degrees and it rained the entire game. We could not throw the ball. We threw it 7 or 8 times, and one of them was a pick. And after that pick, Jim Tressel did not let Todd Beckman throw for the rest of the game. We ran it every single play, 14-3, ugly. whatever. But it was the most beautiful one ever because we ran the ball every play and they couldn't stop it. Beanie ran for 220 yards, running the same 3 plays over and over again. So there's something beautiful about that, about winning a ground war. But what other thoughts did you have on the Ohio State Northwestern game? What players stood out to you, and who needs to make a jump and improve as we hit this little stretch run before Michigan?
Well, I mean, the first guy that needs to improve is Ryan Day. Ryan Day's got to get better. He's got to figure out the running attack. This running attack issue is not a wind issue. It's not a Trey Henderson shoe issue. It's not a we got to change this guy issue. We got to change this. This is a pattern that's gone back for 2 years now. And now, since teams have stopped playing the shell against us, and remember Notre Dame played the shell against us, played the light box, dared us to run, and we passed. Finally started to run, took the game away. Now teams aren't doing that anymore. Now they're playing press on the outside, and they're daring us to pass. And our running attack right now, they're loading the boxes, and for Ohio State, Ohio State's got issues. They have to tweak what they're doing. Now, to their credit, I mean, could you ever imagine a stop? I don't know. I'm a gambler. You're a gambler. Can you imagine getting a prop bet on C.J. Stroud to outrush his passing? Like he rushes for more yards than he passes for in a game. I mean, C.J. averaged 13 yards a carry today, and it just shows you. And he's not particularly graceful out there. He's not really athletic. He's not particularly tough in terms of that regard. I'm talking about like a J.T. Barrett, slamming up in the middle type of tough. But he gained 13 yards a carry. If you looked at one factor why Ohio State won the game today, and you had to pick one out of everything, it was C.J. Stroud's legs. It was C.J. Stroud's runs won that game for us, and that's what we're going to need going forward, CJ. And Ryan Day's got to make those calls. He's got to encourage him to run. He's got to put those constraint plays in, because right now when you run wide zone, these plays are running lateral to the line of scrimmage, slow developing plays, and the defense has a chance to run as fast as they can to the point without any fear of anything happening on the backside. Then you have problems, and that's what Iowa did to us. Penn State did it to us, and then Northwestern did it to us today. So the first person who's got to figure it out is Ryan Day. And Ryan Day's got to figure out that he's got a problem, because the after the post game conference was the most disturbing thing, when he was talking about the wind, and he thought we played fine, and it was like, man, I don't want to hear that. I want to hear, look, I realize we've got some things. We're going to go back to the drawing board, figure it out, because you've got the players are good enough. The running backs are good enough. The coaching staff is good enough. Justin Fry is good enough. Kevin Wilson's good enough. I mean, we got to be able to run better than 2 yards a carry. I mean, today, mine had a decent day, and he's our bell cow, and he had 4 yards a carry. That's not enough. Mm-hmm. That can't be good enough for us to get, and that's certainly not going to be good enough to win the Big Ten, to go into the playoff, and to do anything going forward. We have to be better than that, and we have to be more creative. That starts with Ryan Day. So that he was my number one player that needs improvement, and do I think he can? Yeah, I there's nobody that I'd rather have forming the offense than Ryan Day, but he's got to figure out that they've got an issue, because they've got issues in the running game, and they're not personnel issues, and they're not just this guy missed a block, or this guy, that's a bailout. The coach has got to figure out that we've got bigger issues than that, and that they're systemic, and that we need to change some things.
Yeah, and it was interesting when he said he'd never seen weather like that. And I'm like, well, you grew up in New Hampshire, and you coached for the Philadelphia Eagles and Boston College, and I know that I've seen Tom Brady play in the postseason before, and it's not always 85 and sunny, and none of those guys are in dome stadiums. So that was really interesting. It was almost borderline disturbing, but I again, we played Michigan last year. It was a little chilly, a little rainy, a little windy, and and we just kind of went in our shell. And it's like this year, it's a little windy, and I mean that can't be an issue, because what if it rains against Michigan? We've got to be able to be physical and pound the ball. We don't play in a dome, and we're going to see bad weather. And and for CJ, I mean, he's got to get used to throwing in that, because look at like what Aaron Rodgers and Brett Favre played it in Lambeau, and Josh Allen plays it in Buffalo, and you're going to have to play in that stuff in the league. You're going to have to play in rain. You're going to have to play in snow. You're going to have to play in wind. And, so that was truly bizarre that he brought up the weather like that. I get that it could be a factor, but it can't be a factor because both teams are playing in it. And if you're going to be a big, strong arm quarterback, you better be able to throw it through that wind because these teams that go to the playoffs in January, they're playing in snow, rain, wind, cold. It's the 85 and sunny games are over with by the time the playoffs hit. But yeah,
But Kirk, to your point about both teams playing it, didn't you feel like Fitzgerald just had a great game plan today? Like, I mean,
oh
that guy
yeah,
had what it's like. Hey, let's go fast when we've got the wind. Let's go slow when we don't have the wind. Let's kind of grind the game out. Let's run the wildcat. Let's not even try to pass. Let's just try to get as many first downs as we can to make the. I mean, I thought his plan for the game and his approach to the game and his game management was spot on. Now they didn't have the horses, and they ended up losing by 2 touchdowns. But I thought, man, I thought Day got completely outcoached today by Fitzgerald, and it was like we were surprised by the bad weather. I mean, CJ was talking about how he couldn't feel his hands, and and I was just like, I do realize I don't want to underestimate how bad the weather was. I've talked to people that were there, and they said Nevada, it was bad. I mean, the wind was bad, bad, bad. It was, but that can't be a surprise. I mean, I knew the weather was going to be bad. When I placed my bet on the under in the game this week, I knew that the weather was going to be bad. So I don't know how Ohio State was completely caught off guard by the fact that it was challenging weather conditions there in Evanston. Wasn't it like that? Was that not like? Didn't everybody know that?
well, my biggest thing is like when you bring up the weather, and I mean this sincerely, nobody cares. Nobody cares. Nobody cares. Who cares? No one's gonna be like, oh well, you guys got to pass because the weather was cold or the weather was bad or it was windy or gusty or whatever. Nobody cares. It sounds like an excuse. It is an excuse. And again, it's like Peyton Manning when he saw rain in the forecast, he'd go dip the balls in water and throw them around and get ready for the slippery track. Or Bill Belichick when it's going to snow in Foxborough Gillette Stadium, the team's practicing outside. They're not in the bubble. They're not in the warm and cozy. They're out in the elements. And again, it's just. I'm sure the guys are probably, when it gets a little chilly out, they go inside the Woody Hayes, they go inside the indoor. They're not out in the cold elements. And again, like, you can make an excuse, but like again, like I said, I played it the worst conditions of my career was the '07 Michigan game because it wasn't snow. Snow would have been better than this. It was freezing rain. It was like 36 degrees and it rained the entire day. Couldn't throw the ball. Ball was too slippery. Todd tried with a glove, without a glove, couldn't throw the ball. So we had to line up and run the ball. So it turns into cover zero, 10 guys in the box, 2 tight ends and a fullback, and we're running ISO and power over and over again. And you know what? We won and it worked. So, it's just one of those things where you got to be adaptable to it. And, I get it. Like if we go to the finals and we're in domes and we're in, we're in SoFi Stadium and that's great. But, you're going to have to beat Michigan, man. You're going to have to beat Michigan in the elements. It's not going to be, a warm, fuzzy day at the end of November in Columbus. It's going to be probably freezing cold and it might rain. I don't know, but that was disturbing to me on many levels. I thought that the defense stepped up in a big way. Now, I mean, Northwestern's they're as dangerous as a water pistol. They just have nothing on offense. Very. I mean, I think Toledo would probably beat them just because I think Toledo's got a fabulous quarterback and they've got more skill than Northwestern does. But those guys fought hard. It was an uphill fight. It was kind of like watching Rutgers tonight. Like Michigan walks out to Piscataway. They play Rutgers. They walk into a fist fight. They're down 17-14 and a half, and then Michigan wakes up and they end up trouncing Rutgers like they should have from the jump. They ended up winning 52-17, but they're losing at halftime. And Rutgers doesn't have the horses to run with us or Michigan, but Rutgers didn't score in the second half. And Michigan, they went 28-10 the last 2 quarters and ran away with it. But for me, I just am happy that we won because I think winning is everything. And obviously, you see Clemson, you see a lot of dreams died tonight, and ours did not die. So that's the benefit to playing in the Big Ten is like, you got to get ready to play Penn State and Wisconsin and Michigan. That's it. The rest of it is cream puff city, especially now. I mean, Iowa's way down. So, you're not in the SEC. You're not playing teams that have comparable athletes, comparable talent. We're so much better than everybody we play that even if we roll the helmets out and play, a C-, D+ type game like we did today, we're still going to win and we're still going to advance and we're still going to be, number 2 in the playoff rankings when they come out on Tuesday. So Nevada, what else stood out to you today about the team? Any other individual performances? I think Jim Knowles, cranked it up. He got pissed off after they were running the ball on us. He started blitzing a lot. But what else did you see out of the Buckeyes today?
Well, again, let's talk about Knowles and the defense. I mean, you're talking about a defense that he inherited that was a hot mess last year, an absolute dumpster fire, and they are now statistically a top 5 defense in the country. And I think it's just one of the most amazing transformations because look, you can say, oh, they've only played against. Hey, you can only play against who you're playing against. And right now, I think when the stats come out after week 9, I think the defense is going to be higher ranked nationally than the offense is, and that's really an amazing statistic when you think about it, and quite an amazing accomplishment. And today they held Northwestern to 3.5 yards a carry. It sure seemed like they got more than that. Um, I guess maybe some of that's the sack yardage and some other things like that. But no, like the defense, I thought the defense. What can you say about a defense that gives up 7 points? I'm embarrassed that we're even talking about the defense just because in a game where you only give up 7 points, your problems are clearly on the other side of the ball if the game is still close. And I think the defense. I mean, how many points has Knowles given up after halftime this year?
I
I
mean,
mean,
not many,
it's.
man. Not many.
I mean, it hasn't been many. I'm gonna have to
Yeah.
go back and look at the games. Maybe the garbage time TDs or whatever it is. But like, boy, they've been clamping down, and it's just fun. It's fun to see them running around and doing some things. I mean, did they? I think a mobile quarterback will give us fits? Yeah, we lost some contain. We made some inexplicable plays when you knew what they were going to do. You're like, Northwestern was following a pattern. It's like, okay, first down, they're going to run inside. Second down, they're going to run the zone read, and the quarterback's going to keep, and he's going to break to the outside. Third down, he's going to go back and back. Like they did the same thing every single time,
Yes.
and it just, it was frustrating that we couldn't stop it. But like I said, whenever you give up 7 points, your problems clearly aren't on that side of the ball. It's for us right now, we have to accept the fact that we have one premier wide receiver right now, Marvin Harrison. That we do.
Yeah.
And then we've got a couple of guys in Emeka and Julian that right now are just they're good, really good, but they're not like Marvin Harrison. And we don't have Jackson Smith and Jigba. And Cade Stover, I don't know if he was hurt. I don't know if he was sick. I don't know what, but he was terrible today. Cade was terrible. And I love Cade Stover, Stover Farms forever. Think the guy's been playing at just an unbelievable level this year on blocking and catching and doing everything. But boy, he was bad today, and that just kind of brings me to the whole topic of the body language just looked bad. The body language looked bad from my end. It wasn't encouraging from CJ, from Fleming. Just a lot of guys just looked like they just didn't want to be out there. And I know it's cold, and I know it's rainy, and I know it's an 11 a.m. start, which is probably the earliest these guys are ever going to get a kickoff. But that was bad, and it was hard to watch. But like you said, when you win on a day when other teams are losing, and you find a way, you wake up in the morning, and all of a sudden you're 9-0. I feel a lot better about that performance against Northwestern tonight as I sit here than I did this morning when we were experiencing it. And there's nothing wrong with 9-0. There's nothing wrong with the playoff path running right through Columbus because I'm still going out and say I've had a great handle on this Ohio State team week in and week out. I've been telling you my predictions on how the games are going to be playing out have been almost spot on, and that's not typical. Like there's a lot of years I just don't have any idea what the team's going to do, and they'll surprise me and shock me and whatever. This year I've got a handle on it, and I am telling you, Ohio State's going to beat Michigan. Ohio State is going to beat Michigan. And I love the fact that people are going to start doubting Ohio State. I'd rather deal with the doubt than I would the overconfidence because I think Michigan's going to come in and I don't think they're going to, they thought it was a bad environment, tonight in Rutgers. Wait till they come to Columbus in 3 weeks. I mean, it's going to be awful. So now I'm calling it right now. Big Ohio State victory, but we got to get there between now and then. And we'll get right against Indiana. We'll struggle a little bit against Maryland, and then we'll crush Michigan.
This is great. Appreciate you, CB. 58 total points after halftime for the Jim Knowles defense. He is a magician at halftime. Nevada, you brought that up, and we had our one of our crack informants look that up for us. Appreciate you had that up for us as we are grinding through this. I agree. I think we're going to wax Michigan. Again, this game, it felt so much like in 06 we played Illinois. Illinois was like 2-7, or they were terrible. This isn't the year they beat us. The next year they beat us. They took us up, but that in '06 we beat those guys like 17-10. We were number one in the country. Troy Smith, Teddy, Gonzo, the whole crew. Alex Boone was suspended for the game, so we had to have Tim Schaefer left tackle. That really hurt us because Booney was a great left tackle. But we just kind of showed up, and we were up 17-0 at halftime. We thought we were gonna win 34-0 going away. We were stuck in the mud the entire second half. We stunk. That was a game that we really were like, what the F is going on? It was a lot like this game for the guys, where we were high flying all year, and we go to sleepy, terrible Champaign-Urbana, cold, miserable, no energy. You're in the shitty away locker room. You're in this funky, bad atmosphere, quiet, and we stunk. We absolutely stunk. We knew we had to get better. It was interesting because the next week we had to go back to Illinois. We played Northwestern, and we beat the tar out. We beat them like 54-10 or 7. We just destroyed them. And then the next week was the 1-2 game, which we eventually won. So I think that we're going to hammer Indiana. I think we're going to drop the hammer of Thor on these guys, because I think that Ryan's going to be pissed off. I think his coaches are going to be pissed off. I think if these players have any pride, they're going to be pissed off, because that was completely unacceptable. Versus, I mean, you got outfought by. It's like being in a tight boxing match versus a tomato can opponent who has no business being in the ring with you, but the scorecards are equal going into the the last round, because you're just screwing around and you're not playing your ball. And credit to Northwestern. Like I can't stand, it's hard to not like Northwestern, but I remember Pat Fitzgerald talked trash about us at the '07 Big Ten conference, and it really pissed Truss off. I'll never forget that. On the jet home, we were flying home, and he was seething about what Pat Fitzgerald. So I've never liked them ever since. I respect them, but I don't like them. But I don't really like anybody in the Big Ten, so it is what it is. But no, it was one of those deals where I remember.
Yeah. Kirk, what team do you like?
I don't like any of them. I really, I mean, but there's just different levels of hate. Like Wisconsin, I hate worse than Michigan. I hate Illinois, because again, it's kind of like it's weird. Iowa beat our ass in '04, but they're not talkative, and they're a pretty classy program. They waxed us in 17 and up. It's like Iowa, of all the teams that I don't mind, I don't mind Iowa because they're not bad. Michigan, hate. Michigan State wasn't bad with D'Antonio. I'm just talking about when I played against them. I know they got worse as they went along with him, but there's certain teams that like Wisconsin under Bielema, they were the worst. Northwestern, they weren't punks or anything. I mean, because they're a bunch of accountants basically that are playing football for 4 years, and but I don't know. It's like I remember, and I didn't even remember what Fitzgerald said. It was just kind of like a nothing comment. But Truss was pissed about it, man. And we went out and played them my senior year, and we made a big stink about it, like he defamed our family, and so it was like we beat them 59-7, destroyed them. And this is under the Todd Beckman covered wagon offense. So 59, that's like if Ryan Day scored 300 points against Indiana. It's kind of like the same thing. But no, I genuinely do hate all the other teams in the Big Ten, because I think that's the only way I could ride when I was going against these guys. I couldn't go out and shake hands and pray with them, just because it just seemed fake to me. And a lot of those guys, they love doing that, and they dap each other up and kiss each other on the cheeks. But I really didn't give a shit about those people. And when we were done playing with them, I didn't care if I ever saw them again. I don't want to talk to them again, because that's just how I was wired. But that's why when we didn't have a Heisman Trophy winning quarterback, we were able to run the ball, and we were tough, and we were first in total defense. And we took a team that wasn't very talented to the national title. So I mean, it wasn't rocket science. We didn't have a Heisman Trophy winner front runner quarterback, so we had to run the ball and be tough and play great defense to have a chance. And we squeaked in there, and we lost to LSU. And I tweeted, I was like, yeah, it's hard to beat LSU in Louisiana. You saw how loud Death Valley was tonight. I mean, that was a major factor in that game. If you watch Alabama's offensive line, they did not handle the noise well. So you can imagine playing a national championship game at the Superdome is kind of tough. But what other things stood out to you about the game? Any other player performances? And then we could talk a little bit about some of these late games and these afternoon games that you saw.
I think offensively, you start on the offense, just like everybody was dropping in. Marvin was marvelous. The other guys couldn't hold the ball. I thought Paris did his thing. Our guard play right now is just not good. It's just not. There's no way to spin it. Donnie's really struggling out there. I know Matt Jones has got a bad ankle. I know he's hobbling around, but they insist upon putting him out there over Enoch. So I guess he must be better than him. Um, but our guard play isn't great right now. When your guard play is not at a high level, then you struggle. And I think that's continuing to happen. Defensively, I thought our linebacker play was terrific. The defensive line in general did a pretty good job. Again, you can't really complain too much. I thought the unsung hero of the game was Jesse Mirko, the punter. He handled those long snaps were swirling in the wind back to him. He caught him. He consistently outkicked the Northwestern kicker. Probably saved us 10, 20 yards every possession, and stuff like that really makes a difference. And Jesse's a great kid. Our net punting average has been fantastic this year. He's allowing virtually no return yards, and he's a threat to run with it every time he takes it when he rolls out there to the right. So that's our special teams have been really, really solid, and Jesse was, like I said, he was kind of an unsung hero of the game in the worst possible conditions for a punter. I thought he performed really pretty admirably.
Yeah, and our long snapper, Bradley Robinson, who's a seventh-year guy, is hurt, likely done for the season. And the best part about the backup who came in is that I don't know his name, which is great. That means the snaps have been perfect, and they haven't had to look his name up and say, oh, this snap got airmailed or rolled back or skipped back or was high or whatever. So props to him and props to that unit and those mechanics, because that is, you're right. I mean, you watch Georgia, they smashed a punt, and Tennessee's guy, one of my pet peeves when I played was when guys they wouldn't fair catch the ball, and then it bounces and it rolls to like the 1 yard line, or it rolls to like the 2 yard line. Like, I get it. If you're on the 10 yard line and it sails over your head and it's not a sky kick and there's not guys running behind you to catch it, I get letting it go. But nowadays, these teams are so good at punting it high and letting it bounce and having guys that can kind of deflect it from going across the goal line and pinning inside the 5, that you almost have to field it. But some of these kids are.
But Kirk, explain something to me. You're a great person to ask. You played when the only time that I've seen in Ohio State history when they've consistently done this, and we would put 2 returners back there. You'd put Santonio and you'd put Teddy back there to cover the whole field. And I've never really seen that consistently before that. I've never really seen that consistently since that. Why is that?
I don't. That was a Daryl Hazel thing. He was in charge of helping out on that, and I'm telling you, I loved it because I felt like with the coverage we had, you didn't have guys scrambling 25 yards from the left to right to go try to make a hard catch, like and when you've got guys like Santonio and Gonzo and Teddy back there, other than the '05 Michigan game, those guys are really reliable. They catch it. I don't know if they had the same philosophy that I did, but I learned that from Bill Parcells. Don't let the ball hit the ground. Don't let it roll. Don't let it roll back to inside the 5, because I'll be the first to tell you there's a huge difference. It doesn't seem like a huge difference between starting on the 10 yard line and starting on like the 2 yard line in terms of just the the play calling ability. Because if you're backed up on the 1 or 2, I mean you almost have to sneak it. You almost have to hand it off. If you're on the 10, you can run your whole playbook. You can throw it. There's no threat of a safety. There's no threat of a high snap. Again, it depends on how good your center are, but my centers are generally decent with the shotgun snap, but you never know when they're going to air mail one. They put it, they blitz, they do something crazy, and we, there's that threat of the safety when you're in the end zone. So, I don't know. I used to love that. I used to love seeing. Nothing made me happier than seeing Santonio and Ted back returning punts. It was like the most cathartic feeling ever, because I always would root that they'd run it back and I wouldn't have to go in the game. I could just literally go walk back to the bench and sit down, because there's nothing better than a defensive score or a punt return, because it's just an instant touchdown and you don't have to play. It's like you just get to go sit and chill until your next turn. But I don't know. That's an interesting question. I don't think anybody does that. I haven't seen a team in college football do that. But it'll be interesting. But yeah, I don't know why they don't do that anymore, Nevada. That's a great question. I really haven't seen anyone do that really since then across any level of football. Have you?
Well, I think in the NFL, sometimes they'll do it. They'll have guys back, and I mean, I've always loved it because, like you said, it cuts off half the field, so your chances of having the ball hit the ground and bounce further back is cut by 50%. The guy doesn't have to run, like you said, 20, 25 yards to make the catch. and then potentially fumble or do something like that. And then secondly, if they get the guys up, he's got a guy that's in front of him who can make the call, can block for him, can tell him when to return it, can tell him which direction to go. I mean, it just seems like there's so many benefits, and I'm not really sure what you're giving up by doing that. So yeah, I don't understand it. It like you said, it always gave me great comfort to see Santonio and Teddy back there, and Ohio State's done it, every now and then. They've done it, but for whatever reason, they're not doing it consistently. I just wanted to be able to take on that.
This is a great question, Nevada. Do we need a new OC? And I'm like, well, it's hard because, and great question, Tipper. Appreciate you guys. Appreciate you guys tuning in and joining us right now. The new OC thing is very interesting because to me, Ryan's the OC. I mean, Kevin Wilson holds the title, but he's not the play caller. So you can only have so much blame when you're not calling the plays. When the head coach is the guy that calls the plays, then you can't. I mean, the OC's there to help game plan and coordinate and give his input and probably help corroborate some of the stuff that goes on with the play calling. But Ryan's calling the plays. I mean, he's always going to call the plays. That's his thing. He's like a lot of you see these NFL coaches that are the offensive geniuses. Like they're calling their own plays. They're not handing it off to anybody. Nevada, do you think we need a new OC? Would you like to see Ryan maybe let Kevin Wilson call the game? What are your thoughts on that? Because I mean, I think obviously our offense is in the top 5, so it's not too much to complain about. But it would be real interesting to see how that would work if he went to actually being a head coach instead of being a coordinator / head coach.
No, I think, look, I appreciate the question. I think it's a great question. And I love Ohio State fans that we have such high expectations, but we have to keep things in perspective. I mean, let's look at last year. Last year for the season, we had our problems on offense. We had some issues, but we were number 1 in the country in points, yards. We were number 3 in yards per carry. So that was a pretty good effort. This year, same thing. I'm not quite sure. We've fallen. I think we were number 2 in scoring before this week. That'll certainly fall. We were up there in yards. So it's not like this isn't like one of those problems with the offense that we had back when Tressel was good. We had real problems with the offense back then. I can remember years when I think, and maybe I just blocked it out of my mind, but like we were in the 80s or the hundreds in offense.
God. Easily.
So it's like we don't have those kind of problems. These are tweaks. Look, we have a Ryan Day was a quarterback. He played quarterback. He coaches quarterback. He looks at everything through the prism of a quarterback. So he's a pass first head coach, offensive coordinator, play caller. And he doesn't understand the running game in the same way that somebody would that was a running back or somebody that had a defensive background or somebody that was more sensitive about the running game. That's just who he is. And as long as Ryan Day is the head coach at Ohio State, which I hope is a long time, then he's going to be the thing. And when we're 8th in the country or 12th in the country or 5th or 3rd or whatever, hey, that's pretty rare error. We've got a lot of really good things happening. We have to fix the running game right now. But the answer isn't Ryan Day gives up being the play caller. Ryan Day stops being the offensive coordinator. It's just that Ryan Day has got to listen to other people, and they've got to look and break some of these tendencies that are running, because teams have figured out how to stop our running game. And it's kind of like spy versus spy. They make their move, and now you've got to make your move and you've got to adjust, because it's 3 games in a row now that our running game has just been absolutely stoned, and we're too good to have that happen. But I don't think the answer is it's not a coaching or personnel change on that. It's a system, scheme, approach change.
Yeah, and I think maybe it's giving CJ the ability to audible. Maybe it's having a run pass option when these guys are running zero. I mean, if people would have told me that we were going to see this much cover zero is straight man-to-man coverage where it's your corner versus Emeka or Marvin or Julian Fleming or whoever. And obviously, Phil Parker at Iowa figured out that, screw it, let's run cover zero. Because most people think it's suicidal to run cover zero versus receivers that good. But we haven't made teams pay for running cover zero. Normally, like when you have like some monster wide receivers and none of them are getting double teamed, there's got to be like, some jackpot huge numbers being thrown up. Like, the NFL, if you're playing, the Bills, like Stephon Diggs is either going to get double teamed or he's going to see the number 1 corner and get help over the top. And then the number 2 guy is going to get double teamed. There's always different ways to manage corners, but like these teams like Northwestern and Iowa, who don't have the athletes to run with our guys, are saying, you know what, screw it, let's just play man. They don't run the quarterback. Stop the run, make CJ Stroud beat us in the cold, windy air, and for a half, it worked. Now Northwestern is absolutely awful on offense and defense, but they had to come up with some crazy strategy, and they controlled the clock for 36 minutes out of the 60, and they hung in there. I think that CJ running today hopefully opens their eyes that we're going to have to do this a little bit when it gets tough, because the things that travel in bad weather, and take out your notebook for some of you geniuses that don't understand this, are defense and the running game. Because when it's rainy and snowy and shitty and cold, and your quarterback's hands are cold and he don't feel good, then he can hand the ball off and you can still be productive. But if his hands are cold and all of a sudden he can't throw the ball because it's a little windy out, you have to be able to run the ball. And that means if that means he has to run it too, then let's go win a game. Let's not save everybody for the NFL. Let's not save everybody, because I watch all Jalen Hurts is on the undefeated Eagles, runs all the time. I watch Bryce Young at Bama. I watched LSU's quarterback literally just won the game because he ran all over Alabama. I mean, Stetson Bennett rushing touchdown today. I mean, it adds up, because all of the great teams are doing it, but for some reason, like, we're too cool for school and we don't want to do it. We're the one that won't do it. So it makes us way easier to defend, way easier to scheme for, way easier for the backside defensive end, the constrained player, to just tee off on Mayan or Trey or whoever off the backside edge, because we run a lot of zone read plays where there's designed to be a read and we don't read it, and teams are figuring out, oh, they never read this, so just go kill the running back every time, and we get tackled in the backfield and everybody gets pissed off. But that's just, these coordinators aren't as stupid as we seem to think they are, because some of these guys are actually really good. And Phil Parker, give him credit, he decided, hey, we're going to go cover zero with a bunch of corners that can't run with any of these guys, and we're going to make Ohio State pay and make them earn every yard. And we averaged 2 yards a carry when they did that. Nevada.
Well, yeah. Well, let me make a couple of points about that. One, I think you made a really good point about one of the big things that you can punish a team that plays man-to-man defense on when you're passing is when the quarterback breaks contain, gets out of the pocket, and runs, because those guys are running with the wide receivers. They've got their back turned to the line of scrimmage, and they're going, and you can just kill them with the quarterback run in those situations, as opposed to the zone where everybody's sitting in the zone, eyes facing the line of scrimmage, eyes watching the quarterback in terms of running with that. And by us not having that, we're giving that a huge advantage to the defense by not doing that. Second point, look how easy the run was around the goal line on Mayan's touchdown to go up to the 21 points. It was so easy because we had just run CJ twice, and so that Ed wasn't coming flat down across the line. So Mayan nearly walked in the end zone. All of a sudden, it's like, wow, it's like magic. All of our running game problems, the short yardage, the goal line, the red zone, everything goes away because CJ ran the ball a couple of times. And I do think we're gonna. I think I told everybody this week. You listen to our podcast. I was like, hey, if I were you, I'd take Northwestern plus the 38.5. Really like the under. This week, I'm telling you, Ohio State's going to come out. Indiana cannot stop the run, and we will run the heck out of the ball on them, and we'll beat them badly. And I don't know what the line's going to be, but whatever it is, it's not going to be big enough. So, but I wanted to point out those two things. Running the quarterback, I know I sound like a broken record. I've been saying this every week, but it just makes everything easier. And when CJ came out, let's just call a spade a spade. When CJ came out and said, "I'm not a running back. I don't pay to play running back. They let other guys run the ball." I thought that was like the worst answer that I've ever heard. I wish he'd never said that. I couldn't imagine. Can you imagine the LSU quarterback going, "I don't run the ball. That's not my job. I don't run the ball." Like, are you crazy? What are you saying? The OSU's press people should have coached him up a little bit better, because that was not what NFL teams want to hear. That's not what his teammates want to hear. I'm not sure what he meant by that comment, but it hasn't aged well. And I thought the best thing he could do today was tuck the ball in, run a few times, and by golly, what he had huge success as soon as he starts, instant success as soon as he starts doing it. And it was like magic. The OSU running game starts going, and There wasn't anything magical about it at all. It was very, very predictable.
Yeah, I mean it's the same stuff that Rich Rodriguez ran with Pat White, whatever, 15 years ago. So it's not hard, and the reason why it's so effective is because it's hard to defend. It's built in. You put ends in terrible situations, put defense in terrible situations. A lot of teams have gone away from the read option. I'm not saying we need to go back to the read option, but it is really hard to defend. And when it's run right, again, it doesn't have to be our focal point. It doesn't have to be our number one run. But, we run so many runs now where you leave the backside end and you kind of fake the read. And, back in the olden days, like the 07s, 05s, like the plays we ran, everybody up front was blocked up. You didn't leave a guy. The game wasn't as spread out. We always had at least one tight end, one fullback in the game, generally I formation, that kind of stuff. But now when you spread it out, you're generally leaving the backside end, as the free hitter as you work up. You cover up the down lineman and the usually the two linebackers that are in the box. You have usually a shorter box, but I'm telling you, man, like it's when you get ready to when you really got to win, it's like again go back to the 02 national championship game against the Miami Hurricanes. What broke their back? Craig Krenzel scrambling. And none of those were designed. It was just, hey, I got to go win a game, because I can't throw the ball. I was like 4 for 14 or whatever it was, like in throwing the ball. But scrambling broke their back in half, and it won us a national title, And honestly, one of the things, and Troy Smith is my brother, one of my best friends ever. But, in 06, he didn't want to run the ball anymore. He, for whatever reason, he didn't want to run it like he did in 05. And our offense, while we were more vertical with throwing with Teddy and Gonzo and that type of thing, we weren't as dynamic and dangerous as we were in 05 when Troy would take off and run on Michigan and run on some of these teams because, it's so hard. When we were god awful in 2004, we lost 4 games, 7-4 going to the Michigan game. We won because Troy Smith ran the ball, scrambled, broke their backs. They'd be in man coverage with their backs turned. All of a sudden you hear the crowd roaring because Troy just scrambled for 30 yards, and that devastates the defense. They can't get off the field. They could do everything perfect. If that quarterback takes off, then you don't have the extra guy. Then it's curtains. And CJ, CJ is not a good athlete, but he's good enough to run and get us some yards. Like again, he ran for 79 yards today, 44-yard run. And again, when he goes to the NFL next year, he's going to be playing for the Carolina Panthers, the Houston Texans, the Indianapolis Colts. One of these teams that's tanking. I don't know if he'll go 1 overall, but I imagine he'll probably go top 5. And if you go top 5, you're going to be behind a terrible offensive line. So you better get your running shoes on, get your track shoes on, dude, because you're not gonna have Paris and DeWand and Marvin Harrison and Cade Stover and all Trey, all these guys that are first team All Big Ten, first team All American type players. Like, Justin Fields doesn't have as good a skill guys as CJ does right now. Like Marvin Harrison Jr. could start for the Bears tomorrow. Paris Johnson Jr. could start for the Bears tomorrow. I mean, DeWand could even maybe start for the Bears tomorrow. So, you're going to go to some team that's got a really bad line, probably bad skill. And you know what saved Justin Fields' life? Running. Designed runs. He beat the New England Patriots with designed runs. So, when we see, we make this run, we beat Michigan, and then we win the Big Ten title, we got to go see Georgia. We got to go see whoever the other teams are, a couple one-loss teams, whoever they, I really don't care who they are, if it ends up being Tennessee or whoever it is. But I'm telling you, like, we go see the Bulldogs, you can't hide anything. You can't say, I'm just a running back or I'm not a running back. I'm just going to sit in the pocket and whatever. I mean, you got to do whatever it takes to win because those guys are so damn good. And they destroyed Tennessee, who had a high-flying offense just like we do. Throw the ball, whatever, and it just wasn't enough.
Well, go back to 2014. Like people want to talk about Cardale on the great run, like Wisconsin, Alabama, Georgia, that 3-game run. Look how many times you ran the ball in that stretch.
Yeah,
I mean,
especially against Bama.
I don't have the stats in front of me, but I want to say it was like 14, 15 times a game or so. I mean, it was something. It was a lot of rushes. It was he ran the ball. Like people want to talk about how it was the pass and the big pass or thing set up the thing and his Cardale's big arm. I'd submit it was his legs that were every bit as important as his big arm in those games. And like you can't take the quarterback run out of your equation. I don't care what you want to do. There's no college football team is doing that. Frankly, no NFL team is doing that right now. I mean, short of Tom Brady didn't run. Even Aaron Rodgers at 39 years old will run. So CJ didn't need to be particularly athletic to run today for 44 yards. Made it look pretty easy. An absolutely huge play. Clearly a design play because they pulled Stover out on that thing as the lead blocker.
Yeah.
That was just so easy. That was like taking candy from a baby. And I hope that was Ryan playing 4-dimensional chess and saving that for the right moment to pull that out. But I'm telling you, Ryan, if you're listening to this podcast right now, you need some chicken at home. You're going to have to call those plays more often come down the stretch because we need that. If you said, as you said, we're going to beat the big dogs. Because if you sit in the pocket against Georgia, they're going to take your head off. And there's no way that we're going to be able to stand up to that kind of pressure without moving the quarterback, without rolling out the quarterback, without running the quarterback. That's just I watched every game today, and that was so clear to me, so abundantly clear to anybody who watched college football today, is that you better move your quarterback, otherwise you're going to be in big trouble.
Yeah, I got a quick comment. This is a great one. Walter Brasco, this is get a lot of run on our board. Georgia is the best team. Then he follows it up with, we have as much talent, but not the toughness. Nevada, do you agree or disagree with that assessment?
Well, look, the word toughness gets thrown around a lot, and we like to throw because I think people are looking for like easy solution, like you know, toughness or moxie or Trey Henderson shoes, or they're looking for some simple answers. But the reality is, it's a mentality of the team of how well do you handle adversity? How well do you guys when things are going badly, can you guys adjust and make the proper adjustments? And you know, I think that we've lost some of our edge at Ohio State. I think at Ohio State, when you had that powers, running game, with JT Barrett, for all his limitations, he exuded a toughness. And when we needed 3rd and 1 or